What is up, guys? Thanks for joining me for the Better Daily Workshop in 2021. We may or may not have some other brave souls joining us, but right now we have Miss Katie in Dallas, Texas, and we've got Ryan in Tennessee, a few other who have reached out to brave Zoom on the Sunday evening and join us tonight. We're going to be talking about New Year and New You. And the goal of this evening is to give you both the food for thought and some of the tools required to make the best of this year from a health and fitness perspective. Most of the people who are in the Better Daily group who are working to become 1% better every single day are not new to the pursuit of health and fitness. They've had goals in the past. What we're going to be talking about tonight is a few different reframing pieces from the perspective of newness, from the perspective of commitments versus resolutions. And then we're going to be talking about our default exercise and our default nutrition. And as always, we'll be ending with a Q&A portion in case something comes up. In the Better Daily workshops, our goal is not that I stand here and talk, because I can do that a lot. That's why I have a podcast. At least that's what my wife says. I can talk to nobody in the room, and other people can listen if they like. But tonight and what our workshops are really about is making this practical to you. So if you are live and if you're watching the recording, please drop some questions and let us know what we can do to make this more practical and powerful for you. So tonight, our agenda, we'll be talking about newness. And this is not just newness from an esoteric perspective, but biologically speaking. Then we'll be talking about commitments versus resolutions, which is important this time of year when people are making New Year's resolutions or committing to different goals, health and fitness wise. Then we'll be talking about default exercise. How can we make a better default exercise for ourselves this year? Better default nutrition. And then we'll end on our upcoming Faithful 40 just to answer any questions we have around that, and then some open discussion and Q&A. So first and foremost, we start with our meet and greets. Who are you? Where are you? What's one new and good thing in your world? It'll be relatively short tonight because we've only got two of you live at the moment. So tell me, who are you? Where are you? And what's one new and good thing in your world?
Um, I'm Katie Crawford. I'm in Denton, Texas. And one new good thing in my life is that I am going to try to find a new church this year.
Oh, cool. That's going to be awesome. I'm excited for you. And Ryan, what about yourself, man? Where are you in the world?
On my treadmill. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, just trying to get those intervals in, man. So we are in Nashville. My wife and three kiddos. We just moved to Nashville from Chicago last June. So
Awesome.
we're coming up on the second 6 months. So what's new here is finally the house is not entirely furnished, but our garage gym is getting close.
Look at that gym, man.
That's new and exciting. So.
That's very exciting. I'm gonna have to come work out with you guys. You're like a 8-hour drive away, but it would be worth it.
Man. Let's do it.
Well, thanks.
Like we always talk about, Boaz and Gabriel have lost. So
yes, they would. Well, guys, I'm Coach Alex. I'm here in Greenbrier, Arkansas, and one new and good thing in I don't know if it's good, but one new thing in my world is I have a family of moles who have taken up residence in my backyard, and Gabriel and I have declared war on them. So we have set scissor traps. We're trying to flush them out. If you are particularly tied to PETA, please plug your ears because we plan to get rid of these post haste. They've made tunnels everywhere. I don't know how to explain it. It's very, very intense. So the good thing is we have made a project out of it. And Gabriel's telling me all about how rodents they're warm blooded and they have fur and they have live babies and don't lay eggs. So we're making a science experiment of it. Hopefully we'll get one or 7. I think there's 7 given how many tunnels we have. But okay. So country living. So tonight, our first topic is newness, and the idea of newness is really interesting because from a biological perspective, it's very different from like, oh, it's a new year and maybe we'll do new things. We say new year, new you as like a cliche, but it's actually true in the sense that from a biological perspective, if you hold your hand up and you look at your hand or you look at your finger, your body's composed of literally trillions of cells. They're all living organisms, little building blocks that make you up. And every single cell in your body is going to turn over in the next 2 to 7 years. I know it's a broad range, but depends on how young you are and what part of the body we're actually talking about. But every single cell in your body, every molecule, every piece of you that currently exists is actually going to be brand new in the next 2 to 7 years. And what's interesting about that is you won't even notice that that process is happening, but it's always happening. It's always a part of who you are and what you're up to. The question might become then, what does that have to do with my New Year's commitments or my New Year's goals or my New Year's resolution? And what it has to do with it is this: we actually have a role to play in that process. And that is how our body goes about building us every single time anew. What is that new version of us going to look like? What's it going to feel like? How much energy is that new version of us going to have? What genetic makeup that currently exists in us that might be turned off right now? What's going to be turned on? What's going to be turned off? What kind of food is it going to be built out of? And so what you see to the left here is a diagram that I've walked through in the previous Faithful 40, and that I'll walk through more times this year. But basically, this is a simplified version of all of the different things that we input into our bodies in terms of stress, in terms of our mindset every day, in terms of our nutritional input that actually affects the process of building a new hand. So you guys are in front of your camera now. Let me see your hand as it exists now. I can see Katie's. Ryan's no camera. Great. That's going to be different. It's going to be a completely different hand, and hopefully it looks about the same as what you just held up to me. Otherwise, something's really wrong. Like then the processes have gone very haywire. Maybe you did an experiment on yourself and grew a sixth finger. That would be bad. But the actual cell, the composition of the cells, how easily the cells move energy to from the mitochondria to the DNA, how easily the cells proliferate and create new versions of themselves, whether or not those cells are primarily running off of carbohydrates or fats, for instance. We have power to influence that process this year. And so anytime I come to a new year, I ask myself and I ask my clients, what version of you are we going to build this year? How can we build that better? And it's interesting because we all have our own idiosyncrasies and our obstacles and whatnot kind of tied up in our day to day and in our DNA. But the ethos and spirit of what we do at Better Daily is that whoever I am right now, there's always the opportunity to become better. And so my charge to you, and the reason we're meeting this evening for our workshop, is to challenge you to be a part of influencing that process of newness. So the you see in the mirror, the hand you look at, the metabolism that you have right now, you actually have the opportunity to influence what you're going to build and grow over the next 2 to 7 years. Some of us are older than others, so it's going to be more like 7 years, and some of us are younger than others, and so it might be more like 2 years. Bennett, my 2-year-old, I promise every single cell in his body is going to turn over in the next year, because that dude's just like, he's growing so fast and he's eating so much and he's always moving and he has a lot to learn. You know, little kids, they turn over really quickly. Us adults, we tend to be, well, not stuck, but it's a little slower process. I'll just say that. And all God's people said amen. So what does that have to do with resolutions? Well, when I come to New Year's with my clients, very often we go through a process of reestablishing what their values and commitments are, given what they've been through. And so what you'll see on the left here is an exercise that each one of my personal coaching clients go through. And I'm sharing it with you because even if you're not coaching with me, this is something you can do at home. This is something you can write down. It's a journaling exercise that you can do with your spouse, with somebody in your life who you care about. Even if you have a coach who's not me, like you can get this out on paper and use it as an established structure to help you with your commitment and your resolution. So you'll see I put the words commitment and resolution side by side. I used to work for a company who kind of declared war on New Year's resolutions. Like, don't do New Year's resolutions. We would rather have a commitment day at the very beginning of the year. And the commitment day idea was we're all going to get together, we're going to run a 5K and physically commit to our goals and our wishes for this year versus making a resolution, which may or may not actually happen. And what's interesting is commitments and resolutions, one's not actually better than the other. They're just different things. So you'll notice the exercise we have on the left that I'll walk you through in a second versus what it's actually articulating on the right is a commitment is an overarching value structure that you've decided you're going to live out this year. I'll say that again. A commitment is an overarching value structure that you've decided you're going to live out this year. That's your why. And at the very beginning of the year, it's a helpful time to revisit if anything's changed about your value structure, your commitment to what's going on this year. For most of the people that I've worked with in the time I've been a coach, overarching value structures don't change a lot. Maybe there's like an intense thing that happens at one point in your life, and so there's a lot of beliefs tied up in that change. But then thereafter, the commitment to your values and whatnot, they evolve slowly over time, but they don't change intensely. Where on the other hand, you'll notice kind of down the line there, resolutions, which are specific actions, like I'm going to hike a mountain this year, or I'm going to take a yoga class every month, or I'm going to learn to swim, as one very good friend of mine took on a couple of years ago, and she was very successful at it. A resolution is a very specific action, and that's something that hopefully is backed up by your value structure, but it's more of an action where the rubber meets the road. So as we walk through this exercise in just a second, my question to you is, do you personally feel there's a difference between these two things? This is how I understand it as a coach. This is how I generally articulate it to clients. Do you make New Year's resolutions? Do you make commitments? What's that look like for you in your world? Looks like Scott just joined
Agree
us.
with how you spelled that out, Alex. I would agree with that 100%. Personally, I would say my overriding commitment to myself would be to stay on the path of being able to do whatever I want whenever I want it. The goal that we set 10 years ago is still the goal. And then each year there's different resolutions or goals or projects that come to mind. One of mine this year is Tai Chi. I want to learn Tai Chi, so I'm going to do that. Whatever.
No, that's super cool. I'm kind of jealous actually. I like that resolution. That's really cool. And thank you for that. Scott, I see that you just joined us. If you want to unmute yourself as well and jump into the discussion, you're very welcome to. We're talking about commitments versus resolutions and what that looks like in our lives. For myself, one of my overarching values and commitments is to not let my struggle with Ehlers-Danlos affect my ability to be a good father or a good husband or a good trainer. That's something that really matters to me from a commitment perspective. And we'll talk about how I've come to that for myself. But in under that resolution, one of the things that I would like to achieve this year is I would like to get back to Colorado and hike a 14er. That would be really nice for me. Now notice that hiking a 14er isn't my sole focus of the year. It's not from a resolution perspective. If I don't hike a 14er, it's like, dang it, I missed an opportunity to do that. But it's not going to keep me from doing cardiovascular exercise or eating well or lifting or whatever if that particular trip isn't something that I'm going to be able to keep going with. So a commitment is large, it's overarching, it's a daily thing, whereas a resolution is an activity that you're working toward and hopefully get to experience in the year. Scott says that, sorry, it's kind of noisy over here. I did Mount Massive last summer. Very cool. So Scott, you and I might need to talk about the ins and outs of 14ers. We've driven to the top of Pikes Peak, and I've done about half of it, but I haven't gone to the top yet. Now, what you'll notice on the left from an exercise perspective, as a journaling exercise, this is the process that I take my clients to. We answer two really important questions in the why category. First, I ask them to picture what their health and fitness heaven looks like, and to take a few minutes to describe it. So you could ask yourself, if I did everything right this year, if everything fell into place for me, what could life look like by the end of the year? That's health and fitness heaven. Obviously, that's a metaphor. I don't, everything's not perfect here, but realistically, if I did everything right this year, what would the best case scenario be? And then the second part of that is health and fitness hell. Take a few minutes to describe that, which is, if all of my bad habits got the better of me, what's the worst that could happen this year? What does that look like? And inspirationally and motivationally, a commitment should both pull you towards something good, and honestly, it's a lot more effective if you're a little scared about moving into a bad place as well. And each of us have our demons. I don't intend that we need to wrestle with those tonight unless you'd like to talk about them, but it's a very helpful, I encourage, if you haven't done this, it's a very helpful practice to spend a little bit of time, a little bit of mindfulness around what's the best case scenario if everything went well for you this year, and you made the best of yourself. And then what's the worst case scenario? What's that thing that you don't want to happen, which is why you would work hard? That's under the why, right? Now, something a lot of people miss out on when they're working on commitments and resolutions is the next step. So if you're taking notes, write this down, or if you need a mental note for later, make sure you do this little exercise for yourself. What benchmarks are coming up this year that are important to you? These might be events, they might be trips, they might be birthdays, they might be anniversaries, they might be doctor's checkups. I work with a young lady who has photo opportunities with her job pretty regularly, and those are pretty important. She's standing next to important people and wants to show well, right? So, what important benchmarks are coming up in your year this year? And a benchmark really kind of moves into the what category. So why is why we do things. What is evidence of the things that matter to us, right? So a benchmark really answers the question, am I moving in the right direction? So does anybody have any benchmarks that they're working on this year or that they're looking forward to in 2021?
I still haven't quite wrapped my head around what that would mean to me.
Mm,
That
that's
is one
fair.
I need to ponder.
Yeah, for me, one of the benchmarks, it always happens to be at the end of the year. One of my benchmarks is my birthday. In anybody who's spent any time with me as a friend knows that around Christmas time, which is when my birthday is, I'm thinking about the year in reverse, and I'm also, really looking at myself in the mirror. And I don't just mean like, hey, how do those guns look? I mean, I'm like, are you the man that you want to be right now? And if not, where do we still have to go? Why not? What happened? And how can we change that? My birthday is an important benchmark to me. And my anniversary, which conveniently is right in the middle of the year, that's June 21st. So I've got my birthday at the end of the year, my anniversary in the middle of the year. Both of those are important benchmarks to me that happen every year, where I'm evaluating myself and pondering whether or not things are going the way that I believe they should, and giving me an opportunity to reflect on that. Um, Ryan says, I turn a new decade at the end of June. That's my first benchmark this year. Yeah, I could see that. You're gonna be 30, right, buddy? 30, the big 3-0. I'm just kidding.
Sure. With 10 years of experience.
With 10 years of experience. I'm 30 all over again. I love it. And that's a huge benchmark. So that's funny because you and I have a benchmark really close to each other this year, in the June category. So maybe that's something we can connect on. But that's really powerful. Thanks for sharing that. A benchmark, I mean, you guys have been on hikes. You go on a hike, and a benchmark is a place where you sit down and you take in the view, you breathe it in, and you decide how much further you're willing to go, or how much faster, and whether or not you need a snack. I eat cake on my birthday. That's my snack. um, So I encourage you to look at those because benchmarks, some people think of them as like, uh, what's the word? Like time bound goals that they're a deadline for reaching some health and fitness goal, like a certain weight you should be at. And I mean, if that motivates you, as exciting to you or something, then have at it. For instance, I cared last year, one of my benchmarks, again being my birthday, I wanted to get my mile time below 6 minutes per mile. Last year it was something I was working on. I mean, if I failed at it, I wouldn't be like, I'm a terrible person. But it was something I was actually working on. It gave a little sense of urgency to my training and it was important. So it can be a powerful and motivating thing for you. And if nothing else, it can be a very self-reflective exercise to see the benchmarks in the future that matter to you. I'd love to hear from Scott, unless it's just too loud where he's at to throw down a benchmark or two. But I know that one of your benchmarks recently was that you turned a new decade, if I'm not terribly mistaken. You were like, man, I need to start running. I need to get this thing under wraps. And you've made some huge strides for yourself, unless I'm, I could be talking about a completely different Scott. So if that's the case, sorry, buddy.
Oh, you're good. I'm 36. I had a new baby this year.
New baby, that's what
So,
it was.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay,
that was
nice.
you're good. That was my big event this year.
Mm,
I'd say some benchmarks for me are I do landscaping, and so usually, actually, right now, I guess I feel like is kind of my benchmark, kind of where I settle in for the winter and kind of like you were saying, reassess and kind of review everything for the next season. So I guess I'd say February is kind of a benchmark for me, so I can get everything in order to start the whole season again. So that's in grind mode. And I don't know if that makes sense. Is that the right answer?
Dude, that makes plenty of sense. And seasonal work like that is when you have an opportunity to kind of reset and refocus and understand what work you have in front of you and how you're going to balance lunch and family and all of those things
Yeah.
in the midst of your big workload. That's a huge benchmark.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So the next piece then is what we call measures, and hopefully measures that matter. And this again is in the what category. This is, what proof do I have of my own progress? And this is a powerful part of tracking whether or not you're on par with what it is that you want for yourself. So many of the clients that I work with are interested in body composition change, and so they taking a picture of them before they start the program and taking a picture during the program gives them an opportunity to compare measures that matter. I talked about a benchmark of mine last year, and one of my measures that mattered to me was how quickly I could run a mile. But really, measures are, for everybody else, they're arbitrary. Like for everybody else, a measure's, why does it matter what pant size you wear? Or why does it matter what the scale says? Or why does it matter how fast you can run a mile, Alex? But inside, there are signals to us that we are moving in the direction that we intend to move. And so this is something else that I encourage my clients to think about and decide on at the beginning of the year. What measures are we taking of your progress? And it could be something as intense as a full body circumference and whatnot, or can your left leg go the same distance as your right leg in this stretch? Like those can be measures that matter. Measures that matter could be, am I in a lot of pain, or do I have any injuries currently? Yes or no. That could be a measure that matters to somebody. Or for others, it could be things like medications that you are taking, or how much caffeine you're drinking in a day, or those sorts of things are possible measures that matter as well. So I encourage you, if you haven't thought about it already, what measures, what standards are you holding yourself to tracking over the next year? And this, for me, this is one of the most powerful parts of commitments and resolutions working together, because they say the proof is in the pudding. Most of us aren't making pudding part of our 2021 resolutions, but side note, try certain puddings. Got it. Okay. On a 14er. I'll eat tapioca pudding on a 14er. Okay, I'm done. That was enough. That was enough rabbit trailing for one night. But my contention is, for many people with regard to their health and fitness goals, there is not there's not evidence of their progress that they can point to when they're not feeling motivated, and that they can celebrate when they do achieve something powerful. And both of those both of those processes are really tied up in whether or not you took a picture of yourself, or whether or not you've been tracking your caffeine intake, or whether or not you timed your mile last time you ran it, right? So it's a tiny step, but it's a powerful and important step. And I don't know, maybe if it's the first time you've ever tracked measures for yourself. I know one of the guys in the Better Daily group likes to track his 5K time, and that's really important to him. If you've never tracked measures for yourself, then maybe the first time you decide on some measures, you'll go after them and go, I mean, that was kind of fine. I can do 20 pull-ups, great. But the more you practice this, the more you'll understand what is proof to you that you're moving forward and that it's good for you. And so, last but not least, is the resolution part. And for many of the people that I work with, the simplest way to put this is, what are two things that you're currently doing that you should not be doing this year? What are two things that you're currently doing that you shouldn't be doing this year? And I mean, if you ask yourself that question, you'll come up with some answers real quick. You're like, dang it, I got to stop doing that. And sometimes it's things that you can't stop, or sometimes it's things that you need support in overcoming and whatnot, and that's fine. But from a resolution perspective, in the spirit of 1% better every day, identifying the things you need to stop doing, and drawing a line in the sand is very important. And then the corollary to that question is, what are some things I'm not doing? Two things specifically. What are two things I'm not doing that I need to start doing in order to work toward betterment this year? And unless you have some big thing that you're working on, like I talked about the 14 foot mountain I want to climb as a skill, or as a event, or as a resolution, unless you have something like that you're working toward, those two questions will give you exactly the resolutions that you need to be working on daily. And so in this way, your commitments and your resolutions can work well together. It's just a matter of understanding how your overarching values are exemplified in your benchmarks, your measures, and your resolutions. So I've said a lot here. Before we move on to exercise and nutrition and changing your default, are there any questions or comments or thoughts out there that you guys feel are worth tackling?
Not right now, but I sure need a copy of this because I've not gone through this exercise. It seems like it would be very helpful.
You got it. It's in the PDF notes that I sent you.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
So like, we're finally coming to a place, my wife and I, where we could probably start like expecting good sleep. Would like saying
Yeah.
that you want 8 hours or 7 hours, whatever you have to have. I think you say 7, right? Is the minimum.
7
Is
is
that right? I know it's
is-
different for everybody, but
That's true. That's the average for most people. 7 is pretty adequate. There are some who
okay.
can do okay on 5, and some who need like 9.
So would you say that like would it be like a measure if you're like, I want 6 days out of the week, I want to get 7 hours of sleep? Is that a measure or is that a resolution?
That's a great measure. I think that's a great measure. And in the
Okay.
resolution, what do I need? What do I need to do that I'm not doing right now? Get good sleep. And your measure is a
Okay.
reflection of whether or not that's happening, right? And
Yep.
that's powerful. So if you have a way of tracking your sleep, or if it's just something you're like, hey, 6 out of 7 days a week, I'm going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time, or if I can't do that, I'm making time for a nap. Okay, that's kind of laughable for us parents, but we try. We do our best.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
very good question. The resolution there, the the betterment is I know in order to be better, I know in order to get my mind right and my body right, I need good sleep. That's the thing you're working on, right? And then the measure of that is, how many
Yep.
hours am I getting on average?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. And good luck to you all. That's sleep deprived
Yeah.
baby time is rough on me. What's up, man?
Question for you on, I guess, sleep is also for me a challenge. I'm probably averaging about 6 hours a night,
Mm.
maybe 5:45. So I need to work on that, I know. But my question is, I am not hungry when I get up in the morning. I've never been a breakfast eater.
Mm.
The whole like intermittent fasting thing is always like, oh yeah, I kind of already do that. I'm just not hungry. What ends up happening though is then I end up towards the end of the day, I'm consuming so much at the end of the day.
Mm.
And I know that kind of goes in line with the whole intermittent fasting thing, but I'm not like officially doing that. How do I mean, is there a way to kind of retrain your biology or physiology to want meals at a more consistent rate during your waking hours? Or is that just something I need to work with and do better with what I've been given?
That's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked that. From a scientific perspective, I haven't seen a lot of studies where they compare different processes of making yourself eat breakfast or not. But if one of your goals is how can I reduce the amount of food that I eat at the end of the day, even though I'm not hungry in the morning, one of the things I recommend is an actual fast. Like, don't eat for a day. Drink water, drink a little coffee, drink green tea, whatever. And then tomorrow morning when you wake up, you will be hungry for breakfast. And that's pretty powerful because you will be actually breaking a fast. And then you can, eat and see what happens to the rest of your day because of the food intake in the morning time. And I mean, you have to be smart about when you fast. Don't pick a day that's going to be hardcore and lots of things going on that you need your best mental energy for. Like, pick a day where it's a little restful and there's not so much work to do, or not so much mental energy required of you. Or let your wife know, hey, this day I plan to not eat, so I might be a little grumpy, I'm going to do my best, and you don't ask me to do anything crazy. And then my wife's like, hey, the chicken coop really needs an add-on, and I'm in the middle of a fast. I don't know if that's the best time for me to take on a carpentry project. But anyway, that said, when you try it out for your body, because we call breakfast, break fast. Most people have consumed so much food before the night's over that they're not actually fasted the next morning. They haven't actually burned through their glycogen stores. They're still processing the meal from dinner time, especially if you've done some late night snacking, right? So the reason you're not hungry in the morning, the reason some people are not hungry in the morning, is because they're not hungry. Like, why eat? Because your body's had all that it needs. So if you're trying to see if you can shift that schedule for yourself to make yourself wake up in the morning going, hey man, I could eat, and changing that trajectory from not having so much in the evening, then I would recommend an actual fast and grabbing breakfast the next morning, and then consciously looking at what your hunger looks like throughout the day. That's where I would start.
Cool. Just use that fast as like a reset.
Yeah. The intermittent fasting for folks, and I mean, I'm looking at you. You're a buff dude. You've got a lot of glycogen stores, which means that you likely require about 18 to 20 hours before you're actually fasted. Like, it probably takes about that long before you start going, dang, I'm kind of hungry. So if you ate a pretty big dinner at 7 or 8, it's gonna be until 10 or 11 the next day before you're like, yeah, I could probably eat something. If you flip that on its head, that you have a relatively small dinner because you had a big breakfast, because you were hungry for it, then by breakfast the next day you'll be fasted. You won't have filled up so much before going to bed.
It makes me wonder, even like making lunch the larger meal of the day. Maybe try that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. Some
Yeah,
good
something to
stuff,
toy with.
Cal.
Good question. It's so
Yeah.
helpful as a dad. Like you got so much going on that having to eat all throughout the day is just tough. So you can just
It
start the
really
day
is.
with most of the food that you need, and then you kind of get to.
I remember when I first started, with getting in shape and fitness and health and all that, I was doing the whole like 5, 6 small meals a day, and that was way before kids, clearly, because there's no way. Like, how are you going to pull it off? Like, even if you meal prep all 6 of them, you're never going to get to all 6 of them. Like, that takes too much time sometimes. So, anyway, thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah, you got it. I have a few clients that are like, I've gotten this far in life. Can I just be done eating? Like, it's just a pain in the butt. Like, it just. Katie's one of them. If you could give her her food in pill form and she could just be done with it, she'd be down.
A Soylent Green capsule.
Yeah, was it time? No, it wasn't Time Cop. Demolition Man. They've got the little
Yes.
capsules. Who was
Yep.
that? Stallone. Anyway,
I'm all in.
I'm all in. Bring it. Bring the Demolition Man capsules. Any other thoughts or questions around commitments and resolutions? Awesome. Good ones, guys. Thank you. So moving on to our exercise. All right. So right now I don't know if it's healthy or not, but I'm consumed with this idea of the default. So I want to talk to you guys about it tonight. I did a show recently on Defining Dad Bod called The Devil's in the Default. And what I was working to do is to help listeners shift their mindset around the magic bullets in health and fitness and think more about the default, what your default settings are with regard to exercise, nutrition, your habits in a day, and see what we can do to shift those. But one of the things that I want to bring to your guys' attention this year is the idea of default exercise, meaning that if you're not feeling it, or if there's not some hardcore plan, or if your trainer's not knocking on your door, or maybe you go through something stressful or difficult, then what can you fall back on that doesn't require a lot of mental energy from you in order to stay active? And so I'm calling that default exercise. I didn't realize this is something that I had for myself until a client of mine and I were getting to talk through it together, because this is something that she developed for herself as well. Default exercise is the ability or the opportunity to dive into something that is exercise, but isn't necessarily training and requiring you to learn at the same time. Like you're just doing it because it feels good and it's good for you, and you're keeping your exercise discipline. So this might be a new concept for some of you. You might not have default exercise. You're like, man, I'm trying to figure out exercise. Like that would be really good. And if that's the case for you, then you're going to hang out in this top category here. So you see in the top, I have enjoyable activity versus exercise. Enjoyable activity is movement-based activity that's not requiring you to adapt. You're not sore the next day. It's not particularly difficult. Maybe it's something you've done a lot. So it's a powerful way to stay moving, right? And that's not always exercise. So I have walking on there, for instance. Most people I've ever worked with have walked all of their lives. And I have worked with some people who can't walk or haven't walked, so that might not be the case for them, but walking is something most people can do, and it's not super intense or difficult or injurious or adaptive for them. So for some people, walking, hiking, rucking, those are all kind of in the same category of default exercise. If I don't feel like it and nothing else happens, look, I can set aside 30 minutes today to go for a hike, or I can set aside 30 minutes today to put a heavy backpack on and walk around my neighborhood block 12 times or whatever. So default exercise is the idea that you can do this without expending a lot of mental energy. It's something that you can default to. I have a buddy of mine whose default exercise is air squats, pull-ups, and push-ups. Like he can just set a timer for 10 minutes, roll through 5 to 10 of each of those, and just keep going until 10 minutes is up. And that's that. And in my mind, that's kind of boring, but hey, like I get it. When all you've got is a pull-up bar and you don't really feel like going out in the cold, like default, boom, got it. Like I can knock out 10 minutes here. So cycling, swimming, sports, dancing. If I can't get out and run, then I turn on this. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Just Dance. It's actually based on an Xbox game. Anyway, the boys think it's great. So we dance to Gangnam Style and What Does the Fox Say and all kinds of weird songs. I will not be posting a video of us dancing to these. Not anytime soon. Maybe Kristen will. But anyway, that's a default for me. It's fun. It's easy to do. It's not gonna like make my muscles larger. It's not gonna make me better at burning fat as a fuel source, but it's gonna make sure I don't become a lazy potato, right? Gardening, playing, yoga. These are important things to do. And one of the things that I do with my clients is we find disciplines and passions that they enjoy, or at least don't suck for them. And those are their default exercises. So as I'm talking through this, does anything come to mind for you? Like, hey, that's a default for me. If nothing else, I can definitely do X. I'd love to hear if you guys have some defaults you fall back on.
Yeah, for my wife and I, Alex, it's walking. So it's been something we've tried to do, and kind of kills two birds with one stone, especially if it's a busy day. Then we still get to connect and also get to get movement in. And where we live now is particularly great because we live on a hill, and so we do a handful of trips through that and then through the neighborhood, and knock out 2 or 3 miles. And we try to do that 3 or 4 times a week.
That's so legit.
And as a fill-in if we don't have time to do the whole gym thing. So
for a time period, my youngest would not stop crying unless he was in his stroller. So I feel you, dude. That was very important. I was like, I don't get to talk to my wife unless I'm pushing this thing. That's love it. What about you, Scott? Do you have any defaults? I think you're muted, brother. Yep, I can't hear you. I'll move on to Katie.
I like to run.
There he is. You like to run? I'm with you.
I like to, yeah.
Yeah, that's my default as well.
My boys run. Yep.
I love it. I'm like, you just put on some running shoes and go. Like, I'll be back. I need to run. I'm like, out. Peace. Katie, what about you?
My default is a hypertrophy workout. I love every second of it. I just love moving some weight. It makes me feel good. I don't have to think. I just move weight.
I've seen her guns. She's not lying. Like, she's like, it's been a day. I don't want to think about anything. I'm going to go leg press lots of weight. That's awesome. Nice. I feel that one too. I think if it came down to it, I'd probably run, but I'm good for like 5 sets of bench press and some weighted pull-ups or something if it's been a day. Like those go together really well. So if
you guys can teach me how to like running, let me know.
How to like running?
Yeah, you guys who like running, you can teach me.
I mean,
I would love to.
How tall are you, Ryan? How tall are you?
About 5'8".
Okay. I mean, you're built, dude. I mean, when you're pretty solid, it's hard to like running. I remember I was like 13 pounds heavier than this at one point in my life. I hurt my back, and then I was like, how big can I get? How much muscle can I put on? And that's just what I did. I did hypertrophy for like 2 years, and I didn't run. And I ran for the first time after that. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I was like, clop, 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 clop. I'm like, man, this stinks. I hate running. Like, this is awful. So if you're built a little more solid, running is rough at first.
Yeah, that probably would help. I've probably got about 15, 20 pounds to where, I'd like to be if I'm looking to be lean, and that would help. That would make it easier. Be sitting at 185 instead of
I've got a client who is like, I hate running. I'm not going to run for you. I hate it. I'm never going to be a runner. And I'm like, all right, fine. But hey, what if I asked you to jog 1 minute and let you walk for 4 minutes and then you jog for 1 minute. Like, could you do that like 3 or 4 times? And he's like, I could jog for a minute. Fine, I'll jog for a minute. So he jogs for a minute and he rests for 4 minutes and he does that 4 times. And he's like in his message, he's like, this is terrible. I hate this. Like, I'm never going to be a runner. I'm like, that's fine. So we're going to do this twice a week. Like, and so he does it for like 3 weeks and he stops complaining about it. And so we up it to 2 minutes. He's got to run 2 minutes and then he's got to walk, for 3 minutes. And so he's like, this is terrible. I hate this. Like, that 2 minutes was hard. I'm like, I get it. And he's like, just for your information, I'm not going to be a runner. I'm like, I get it. But can you be a guy who runs sometimes? Like, can we do that? Like, and he's like, okay, I can be a guy who runs sometimes. So fast forward, you see where this is going. So fast forward 6 months, the dude's lost 30 pounds and he loves running. Like, he loves running. He's like, yeah, I get up in the morning. Now I just go for a run because I feel like it. And he's like, but I'm still not a runner though. I'm a guy who runs sometimes because I'm not giving in, Coach Alex. So anyway, all that to say, there's most people, there are some things you could do from a lower body perspective to like help your calves be a little bouncier and whatnot. But for most people, they hate running because they've dove into it and done way too much, way too fast. And their body's like, dude, like, like, of course you hate running because your feet hurt and your hips hurt and your back hurts and your knees hurt and you're mad about it the whole time. Like, and it's cold outside, like it's winter right now. So anyway, all that to say, maybe we should do a running workshop sometime. That might be fun. I'll put that on the docket. Thanks for telling us you hate it. We're all gonna try to help you.
I
That'd
asked
be
for it.
fun. A running workshop would be really fun.
I think it'd be fun. You're gonna see a lot of my feet. Actually, I've got no joke. I've got like a skeleton foot on my bookcase. I'll have to bring it next time. That's what we'll do. We'll do a running workshop next month. I declare February the month of workshops for running. Thank you, Ryan.
All right.
That'll be good. Oh dear, take that. You got me all excited. All right, so from a exercise perspective, though, it's important that we have a cardio and a resistance. So default exercise is what we get to fall back on when we don't feel like it, when we don't feel like training, when the bandwidth is eaten up at home or whatever, and it's just staying disciplined, it's staying active in your practice. That's what default exercise is. Now this year, I hope that default is not what you do all year, all of the time. I hope that there are periods of time where you have a little more bandwidth and a little more opportunity to train. And from a training perspective, we need to be training cardiovascular exercise and we need to be training resistance. And so the difference between training and activity is training adapts you, makes you stronger, faster, more endurable, more agile, more flexible. Training adapts you. Default activity just maintains you. And that's not a bad thing. We're all fighting the clock. If we don't do anything, entropy will take over and we'll all get out of shape and whatnot. Good night, Ryan. Thanks for joining us, man. He just said he was tucking in his kiddos, so good night. Default exercise keeps us active and maintains us in the times when we're unable to commit to training. But training is improving us over time. And so in training, cardio needs to be a part of that. You need to improve your cardiovascular system or at least maintain your VO2. And you guys have heard me preach about that before, I'm sure, so I won't do that a lot here. And then similarly, from a resistance perspective, what I find is helpful to people in the new year is to set a resolution for consistency. So no matter what happens in my week, I'm going to, this is my wife's rule. This is her rule. No matter what happens this week, I'm going to lift weights 3 days a week, and I'm going to do 1 day a week of cardio. That's all I can get out of her yet. Somebody pick on her for me next time you talk to her. But she'll do it. Katie won't pick on her. She'll slap me for her. But the resolution for consistency is really helpful because it gives you a mental checklist. In fact, I have some clients who keep a checklist on their refrigerator, and it literally just says resistance, cardio, cardio. I can check the resistance boxes this week. I did it twice. I can check the cardio boxes twice this week. Boom. I got 4 bouts of exercise in this week, I win, I can move on to next week. Or maybe I can do a bonus one or two, right? But whatever the case is for you and what you need for your goals, a frequency statement is a really powerful resolution. So you might have noticed I post right now my runs. I say run number 6 of 100. So one of my resolutions this year was to run at least twice a week, which comes to about 100 runs, and 100's a nice round number, right? I hope all injuries notwithstanding, this isn't actual wood, or I might be able to knock on it. This is a green screen, so no wood for me. But the if I could knock on the wood, hopefully I end up with more than 100 runs this year. But that's one of my frequency statements is I'm going to run twice a week this year. I'm going to get 2 good run-ins in each week that I feel good about. And so I'm counting that up. And that's powerful. It's a very powerful mental checklist. It's kind of like making a grocery list. If you make your exercise grocery list at the beginning of each week and you have something to check off, it's really helpful. It kind of gives you some what's the word? It gives you foundation to stand on. It gives you something to check off. So very powerful. And then lastly about this year, you could also put on your list, and you don't have to, this is a lot all at once, but the other thing that you could do is think about any new skills you would like to develop this year. One of the most powerful things about the human body is that there's just so many things we can do. There really is. And even if you have injuries that you're working around, or surgeries that you're working around, or obstacles that you're working around, or lack of equipment that you're working around, there's so many things that we can still do with ourselves. And working toward new skills every year is one of those powerful ways that you can remind yourself of that. And those of us with young kiddos, I will say working on a new skill is a great way to put yourself in a position to fail, to show them how to deal with that. That for me is important. I want my sons to see me not just as the guy who seems to have all the answers sometimes. I'm trying, but also to embody the process of what do I do when I don't have the answer? What do I do when I suck at something? And I still suck at stuff. Take me bowling sometime. That's something I suck at. You can write that one down. I want to beat Alex at something. Go bowling. Like you'll crush me. I'm not a good bowler, and I'll get very annoyed. but but it'll be fun anyway. So and that's not on my New Year's resolution list, by the way. I don't have the goal of becoming a better bowler. But if you want to take me bowling, you can kick my butt, and I'll be a good loser for you. Anyway, so that's something you can put on your list, new skills that you would like to develop, and that's something you can work on as well. So I've said a lot of things about default exercise and training here. I hope that a few things have resonated and been valuable there. Are there any questions out there before we move on to nutrition? Good, awesome. Well, default nutrition, as complex as nutrition can be, so I've got this graphic in front of you, looks really complex. As complex as nutrition can be, one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself nutritionally this year is to create an ideal day from start to finish. In an ideal day, it's something that's going to feel good to your digestive system, and something that's going to be good for your body composition, something that's going to fuel you well, something that's not going to take hours to cook or prepare if you don't have hours to cook or prepare. What does an ideal day look like for you? And this is a practice that I have many of my health coaching clients go through, is to sit down with me and line that up, man. What are we eating for breakfast? How much coffee are we drinking? Do we have a snack before lunch? When do we take the supplements that we've talked about taking? What's for lunch? What makes sense for lunch? Not just like what do you wish you could eat for lunch, but how can we get an adequate amount of protein in the middle of the day? How can we eat something we enjoy eating on the go if we have to? Do we have any snacks before dinner? When do we drink water? How much water do we drink? Or what's our system for making sure that we get enough water in a day? And then what's for dinner? And do we have a glass of wine or not after dinner? Or how frequently does that need to happen? That sort of thing. And I know it sounds tedious, but in 10 minutes, you sat down and you opened MyFitnessPal and you plug away at an ideal day. In 10 minutes, you can have what I've come to call a default nutrition day. And this is man, if you can figure this out in life, you got it. Like if you don't take anything else away from tonight, if you can figure out what you're putting in your body every day, most of the time, and how to make that good for you, and how to make it, not taste bad, and how to how to make it time efficient enough that you can do it regularly. Like if you can figure that out, dude, like your hormones are set, your muscles are set, your body fat's set, your sleep will be better, uh, and then your grocery planning becomes a lot easier because you're like, oh yeah, just make sure I have here's some of my default stuff. Make sure I got my oatmeal. Make sure I've got my canned salmon. Make sure I got my eggs. I make sure I've got these things, and that just makes grocery shopping so much easier. Just really does. So my challenge to you in 2021 is to create a default day. If you need a hand with that, that's something I do to help people, is to create a default day that makes sense. Or if you just, you don't have to hire me for this. If you want somebody to look at it, post it on the group. Say, hey, I created my default day. This is what it looks like. Like, does anybody have any feedback? Or do you also like mackerel? Because Alex is weird and eats fish out of cans, like anything besides canned fish you guys can think of for protein, because that's all Alex keeps telling me to eat. But you can post that, and I'd be happy to give you some feedback, and vice versa. I'm sure there are several people in the group who are like, hey, did you know you can add hemp parts to Greek yogurt and get a good amount of fiber and healthy fats? Like, comes in a pack at Walmart. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, the default day can be a really powerful, default nutrition can be a really, really powerful tool in your year this year. And the reason it's called default is because we will constantly come across things in our year that are going to throw us off our nutrition bandwagon, right? One of the benchmarks, like if you have an anniversary as a benchmark, that's probably not a default nutrition day. Like there's going to be, in my anniversary, there's going to be carrot cake involved and a glass of wine, or several. And that'll be great. And I'm not even mad about it. But the next day is going to be a default nutrition day for me. And because I know what that looks like, because I know what I regularly eat for breakfast that works well for my digestive system, and that feels good and has a great amount of fiber and not too much sugar and the right amount of protein and all that stuff, then it's not a question of like, when am I going to get back on the bandwagon, or, oh man, last night was rough. Like, it's just, this is what I do. This is my default. This is really easy for me, and it's good for me. And there's no questions. And I mean, anybody who has kids knows you don't get to make a lot of decisions about yourself when you're trying to get food in them. God, such a natural process. Why is it so hard to get food in a kid's face? Jeez. Scott's like, I hear you, dude. So anyway, default nutrition day, if you've never done that before, please do it. It's a powerful exercise. It will change a lot of things for you, to be able to have in mind, like, this is what I eat that's good for me. This is what I eat that works for me. This is what I eat that feels good and is time efficient and tastes good and all those things. Have a default nutrition day set up for yourself, so that as things come at you this year, you can come back to the default when it matters. So I said a lot of things on that as well. Do you guys have any questions or feedback or comments you'd like to make on that section?
Seems to me that what you're saying is, just like I have a hypertrophy day as my comfort day, if I just don't want to think, I just want to move some weight, the default nutrition day needs to match that, however it is, the calories or whatever, to match the comfort exercise day that I like. Or is it more psychological, like, as kind of like, well, no, I'm just going to eat this because this is what I eat, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If your exercise practice is developed enough that you're, for some people, their default exercise is, I'm going for a walk, I'm doing a yoga class, and like, what you do or don't eat isn't really going to affect your performance in a walk or yoga. But if you've developed your exercise practice enough, let's say Scott's default exercise is to go for a 6-mile run. Hell yeah, his default nutrition needs to be fueling well for a 6-mile run. He can't can't be all protein and no energy molecules there, man. It can't default nutrition. I'm just gonna eat beef jerky all day because that's what I like to eat and it's easy and what like that's not gonna help you on your 6 mile run. Like it's not gonna stick with you long. So yeah, I think that's a really important point is that what works for us generally from a nutrition perspective, what fuels us well, what our default, our ideal day looks like, will have a lot to do with how well trained we are, um, how much energy we need, and all that stuff. I appreciate the thought because if I presented this to just the general public and I said, hey, what's your ideal nutrition day? What would you want to eat? Like you could have it every day. It'd be like freaking pizza and cupcakes and a beer. And it's like, well, I mean, fine. Like, but, but you're not going to live long that way. Like, that's not what I mean. So I think that's really well said is your default. And I think it's important to point out everybody's default is going to be a little different. It's going to be an intersection of taste and what you need energy wise and what you like and how much time you have to put it together and whether or not your kids are going to steal a serving. I have to open 2 cans of oysters. Woe is me, because my boys will eat one all by themselves. Dad does not get a snack by himself. Like you open one thing and they're like, oh, I want to bite. I'm like, you weren't hungry 3 seconds ago. What in the world? So anyway, so my default day is 2 cans of oysters because I'm not exactly sure how much of them I get. So but that works. Anyway, I think that's a really good point. If your default exercise would influence your nutrition because you're well trained enough that that's a thing, then yeah, it needs to coincide with that. You can't eat less than your exercise requires you to eat in order to maintain it.
But doesn't it also work like if you're in a situation, if you're not surrounded by people who might support you as best as they can with your food, you could use it as no, this is my default. This is what I'm going to eat.
Yes, yeah, exactly. This is what's good for me. This is what I need right now. I'm not asking anybody else to get on my oysters and like sardines diet, but like this is good for my digestive tract and makes it happy, and I don't have to wake up in pain at 3 a.m. So you can share my oysters if you want, but I'm not gonna make you. I think that's a really good point. I think it's a helpful. There was a phenomenon recently. I want to say it was like 5 or 6 years ago when detox diets were going around. You guys remember that fad? Like everybody was trying some sort of weird detox, like drinking apple cider vinegar and honey and cayenne pepper or something to detox their liver. Anyway, what was weird about it was just accepted, like that people could go, oh, I'm on a detox. And you're like, oh, okay. And you don't ask weird questions about why you're drinking kale juice and eating lettuce wraps. Like okay, they're on a detox. Like fine. But there is a space in folks' brains around that as an acceptable excuse. And please, for the love of God, don't call your default day a detox day. Like I don't want to start that. It's the Better Daily Detox. You get to make it up. Eat whatever you want every day. That's not good. Not good branding. But no, really though, there is an accepted part of folks' psyches, especially from a support perspective. If you say, look, this is what I have to eat to stay healthy, or this is what I need right now to be good for me. I've had clients blame it on, this is the diet my trainer and I came up with. Fine, if you have to blame me, I don't care. But this is true across the board. People who have gone through heart surgery, for instance, their dietitian will put them on a heart healthy diet, and it's like, well, I have to eat this and I can't eat that anymore for my heart, and I can't eat that anymore for my heart, and I've got to eat this for my heart. And people just accept that. It's like, okay. And so that's like you said, Katie, this is giving yourself permission to develop a diet that is your backdrop. It's your way of doing things that's good for you, and that 90% of the time is the way the world works for you, so that the other 10% of the time it's it's not that big of a deal if it's not on the default. It's not hard to come
It's
back
the
to it.
best way to do self-care, considering what you do as far as your exercise. It's the way you self-care. It's
Mm.
the second part of the self-care.
Right. And I think that that brings me back to our little drawing here. You'll notice in the bottom left, the nutritional input box. That's what our cells are building themselves out of. And so if our defaults are good for us, if regularly what we're consuming is giving our body what it needs in order to build the new version of ourselves. Scott, you probably missed this, and you can check this out in the replay from the beginning. I was talking about what newness means from a biological perspective, but your default is what you are feeding yourself to build yourself out of on a regular basis. And like you said, it's the basis of self-care. Like if your default is not up to snuff, then the version of you that you build a year or two from now from all of that stuff that you ate is not going to be as awesome as you'd like that version of yourself to be, right? One of the most powerful versions of self-care is to make sure your future self doesn't get pissed at your present self for how you didn't take care of you. that's When's the best time to take care of yourself? Well, probably 10 years ago. When's the next best time? Now's a good time. Now's a great time. So I appreciate that, guys. This I want to end on this, and then I'll open it up for any other questions you guys have to close down the night. I know we went a little over this evening, but February 1st starts our next Faithful 40 challenge. So we'll be journaling every day, our mindset, our nutrition from the previous day, and our exercise plan. And I'm excited about this. I love this. We started this last year in March when the pandemic hit, and it was just such a powerful experience for me. And there's so many who have found it helpful to themselves and their families and friends and whatnot. So I'm excited about this. My question to you is, if there's anybody in your world that you think needs to join you on that journey, invite them. Give them a heads up. Like, hey, February 1st, I want you to do this thing with me, and we'll get them all set up, because the Faithful 40 challenge is about, one, you being accountable to yourself and in the community of people who are trying to be better, but also that ethos can spread to other people around you. I'm our previous Faithful 40 challenge, the best inviter was Patrick Lee there in Tennessee, and it was crazy. The guy he had him and his wife and his oldest son and 3 of his neighbors all doing this Faithful 40 challenge. So I was just a regular topic of scrutiny. Like Alex says, I'm not eating enough protein. Are you eating enough protein? How do you eat enough protein? So that was a lot of fun. But it was cool, because that really is that's the heart of the Faithful 40, is for 40 days. Can we commit to improving ourselves from a mindset perspective, being diligent about our nutrition, and encouraging each other in our exercise? So I'm looking forward to running that with you guys in just a week, actually. Very short week ahead of us. So we've talked about a lot tonight to set 2021 up really well, and you guys have the slide notes in your email, so you're welcome to go through those if you want to do the journaling exercise yourself. Highly encourage you to open up MyFitnessPal and build a default day. That would be powerful. But what specific or practical questions do you guys have about your health and fitness this year that I can help you with? It's okay
Well,
if we
you
answer
pretty
them all.
much already do help me, but I will tell you this, Alex, these workshops make it easier for me to stop and pay attention. So thank you for that. If you understand what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
know we talk about my program and have for the last 10 years, but these workshops are bringing a different dimension. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm glad you weren't like, God, I've worked with Alex for so long. What the heck else is he gonna tell me? That'd be great. But thank you. I appreciate you being here.
No, it really is bringing another way for me to stop and think. It's surprising me, but I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. Scott, do
With
you have
the
any questions,
default
brother?
nutrition, too. Yeah. With the default nutrition, do you kind of make it as easy as possible? Like no cooking at all? Is that a part of yours? Like you're like, I can just pull this out and eat it within like, do you
That
see what I'm saying? Like for
yeah,
like your dinners or whatever. Okay.
I understand. My personal day, I do a little cooking for breakfast. Like, I mean, it takes me a minute and a half to make my oatmeal and scrambled eggs. Me and the boys eat scrambled eggs every day. Like that's just how it goes in our house. And like breakfast for us, that doesn't take long. You crack, and it's not fancy. You crack a few eggs in a thing. You put the oatmeal in the microwave. Like 8 minutes later, there's food on
Yep.
the table. The hard part is getting the dang food in the kids. That's the hard part. like I can finish my breakfast in about 3 minutes. They're like, he poked me with his fork. Where's my? Yeah, you know how it goes. So breakfast I actually do cook. Lunch, that's where I'm at. Like I don't want to cook anything. I don't have time to cook anything, so it has to be relatively quick and whatnot. And I do set my lunch up that way to be simple, and I can just grab, and it could be as fancy as half of an avocado, some sardines, maybe some saltine crackers if I need carbs and a crunch, and maybe a piece of fruit and a whole vegetable. I like carrots. Like I'll just eat like Bugs Bunny 2 carrots just to make sure I got some fiber and veggies in my system, right? And then dinner time is usually a family event. So like, my wife and I will plan what we're gonna do this week for dinner, and we're not fancy about it. Like tonight we thawed some chicken. It was frozen. We set it on the oven this morning, and we threw some frozen veggies in a pan with some Cavenders, and it was chicken thighs and mixed veggies, and that was dinner. And it took
Mhm.
10 minutes to throw together. Well, we put the chicken in the oven, and that took a couple minutes, and then let that cook, and then we put the veggies. But and then we'll do like a roast or something like that. It just, that's all in. I don't know if you've gotten to check it out or not. That's in the nutrition section on
Okay.
the group. That those dietitian written meal plans, we use a lot of those for dinner. Um, so that's how I orchestrate my week in general. Is it's the same breakfast every time. Lunch is super simple in the sense that there's no cooking involved, and it's a quick grab and go kind of thing. I have a couple options in there that I've enjoyed over the past year that work well for me and meet all the needs. So I just kind of change it up as I need to. And then dinner is a joint effort. It's cute. My wife's a dietitian, right? She'll hand me the grocery list and like, let's make grocery list. And so she'll go, what do you want for Monday? And I'll say, how about chicken and veggies? Like, no, we had that on Friday. Like, okay, how about some roast? Will you roast? I'm like, nah, I don't feel like roast. I'm like, how about you make the grocery list since you don't know what like so so that's usually how it goes on Sundays for us. Does that answer your question though?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
New for the eggs. What's up with egg yolks? Like, I feel like eggs are sometimes really like superfood, and then it's like it's bad for your heart, and then it's like, well, it's just the egg yolks that are bad for your heart. Like,
Yeah.
what's
Good question. So some folks have a genetic mutation where they're really bad at filtering fat from their bloodstream, and so for those folks, high levels of saturated fat will translate to problematic cholesterol numbers. Now, if you don't have a history of heart disease and your HDL, that's your high density lipoprotein, is relatively high compared to your total cholesterol, it's really not a cause for concern. But if you want to get really ninja about your eggs, it's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't do it personally, but you can do this. You can separate your yolks and whites and eat yolks one day and whites the other. And that actually covers all the bases. So you get a big influx of saturated fat once, and then you get nothing but protein the next. And one of the reasons that's powerful is because the egg whites have antinutrients in them that actually block the uptake of some of the nutrients in yolks. And so when you eat the whole egg together, you don't get quite the same bang for your buck nutrient wise that you would if you separated the two. So if you want to get really ninja, if that's a concern, this is something I've recommended to clients who love eggs, but they're for whatever reason their cholesterol's stupid high. Like I'm not saying like 200 on the border. I'm talking like 320, and I'm like we could be eating eggs that would be great for protein. They're like, no, my doctor won't let me eat eggs. I'm like, here, let's try an experiment. Let's do 6 weeks where we do just egg yolks, just egg whites every other day. And then let's get your cholesterol tested. If it goes up, fine. I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm talking about. If it goes down, we win, right? So it always goes down. I've never had it go up. So that said, that's one of the hacks you can play with eggs.
I have a logistical question too.
Bring it.
Does the Better Daily, is there an app for that, or is it only like in your browser?
I'm so excited you asked that. We have an app coming. So right now it's it's in development. Part of being a founding member means you won't have to pay for it when it comes. Like you've kind of gotten in at the ground level, which is good. So yeah, the app should be ready before the Faithful 40 is done. So about the end of February, you'll be able to download it from either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. And I'm super stoked about it because that was a big step this month.
Great. Thanks, man. Thanks
Yeah.
for everything. I really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you.
You got it, man. I'm so glad you're a part of this. Thanks for being here. All right, guys. I hope that you all have a fantastic, fantastic week. I'm going to wake up and eat my scrambled eggs and my oatmeal, and I'll try to kick the week's butt. So good luck with your homework this evening, and I look forward to connecting with you guys soon in the Faithful 40. Y'all take care.
Good night.
Good night.